Hi, this is Robin Redmond Wright. We view museums as sites where public pedagogy and emancipatory learning can occur. Public pedagogical spaces offer adults the kind of visceral and emotionally charged educational experiences that can provide opportunities to critically analyze formal, educational, and often hegemonic messages. In this presentation, we will explore critical pedagogical perspectives in relation to cultural evidence that is everywhere we look. Public sites such as monuments, popular culture like film, television, and media, and archival material like documents and texts.
Hi there, my name's Ed Taylor, and I think it's important at the beginning of this presentation that we start by reviewing a few key constructs central to this topic. They include public pedagogy, critical public pedagogy, and emancipatory learning. When engaging in critical public pedagogy, it involves moving beyond basic descriptive questions about an artifact, text, popular culture, or public site. Instead, it is about asking more challenging and provocative questions that focus on representation, voice, and power. These questions explore whose interests are being served, issues of exclusion and inclusion, and why are some voices not included in the dominant narrative. To fully appreciate the significance of critical public pedagogy, we're going to ask you to participate in 3 activities involving a public site, artifacts, and popular culture. Let's go to the next slide and see how these questions can be applied to 2 historical sites in the United States. In this slide, take a few moments and look at the pictures of 2 historical public sites. Make note of what you presently know about them and where you likely learned this information. You also might consider discussing these images with someone else as you look closely at the slides. Once you've gathered your thoughts, go to the next slide, which will provide some specific questions to reflect on. Before you begin discussing these questions, let me share with you some descriptive information that is most often provided about these sites. The picture on the left is Stone Mountain, which was started in 1923 and it was completed in 1972. The idea of a sculpture on the face of Stone Mountain was initiated by the Daughters of the Confederacy to honor General Robert E. Lee for the leadership he provided to the Confederate Army during the war between the states in the 1860s. This monument is located in Stone Mountain, Georgia, in the suburbs of Atlanta. It is the largest granite face in the world, over 1,600 feet above sea level. 3 Confederate Civil War heroes are represented: General Robert E. Lee, General Stonewall Jackson, Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederacy. The first sculpture, although there were 3, was Gutzon Borglum. This site is now a major tourist attraction. Check out the link to the laser show at Stone Mountain a few slides ahead of this one. The second picture to the right is Mount Rushmore. It was started in 1927. This sculpture was started in 1927 and completed in 1941. It is located in the Black Hills of South Dakota. The sculpture is the same as the Stone Mountain, that of Gutzon Borglum. Represented here in this sculpture are the Presidents George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. The cost of this sculpture was $1 million, and no lives were lost in the construction of this site. Mount Rushmore is now managed by the National Park Service. Now, from a critical pedagogical perspective, there are other narratives about these public sites, and for that, go to the next slide. Now I would like to share a bit of narrative that is less often discussed about these monuments. Let's start with Stone Mountain. To provide a bit of context, in 1915, on top of Stone Mountain, a ceremony was held to commemorate the rebirth of the KKK, or the Ku Klux Klan, originally a Confederate Veterans Association. However, it evolved into a white racist organization Since that time, Stone Mountain has been a symbol for the KKK in celebration of white supremacy. The sculptor Gutzon Borglum and the owner of the mountain during when the construction started were both members of this organization. When the work started on this site, ironically, 4 African American laborers helped install the steel beams on its face that were used to support the work platforms. In May of 1970, when the site was completed and dedicated, a noted African American theologian and pastor, William Borders, gave the invocation, forcing the KKK to withdraw from attending the ceremony. In the second monument, Mount Rushmore, which is located in the Black Hills of South Dakota, is historically sacred land of several Native American tribes, predominantly the Sioux. This site was used by Native Americans to make contact with the spirit world and to obtain spiritual power. Around 1877, the Black Hills were stolen from the Native Americans. It was not only a theft of a sacred space, but also all significant geographic features in the area were renamed to non-Indian names. For example, the site of Mount Rushmore was often referred to by Native Americans as the Six Grandfathers. Originally, the purpose of building Mount Rushmore was seen as an opportunity to attract tourism to the area through the transformation of one of the granite faces in the Black Hills. It was to commemorate individuals who had mythic stature in the discovery and settlement of the American West, such as Custer, Lewis, and Clark. However, the sculptor Gutzon Borglum had a different vision and proposed the sculpture as the shrine of democracy, including several presidential portraits. Its purpose was to, quote, communicate the founding, expansion, preservation, and the unification of the United States, end quote. In many ways, it reflected the manifest destiny and viewed by some as an expression of racial superiority, justifying the theft of Native American sacred lands. Before we start to move on to the next activity, reflect or discuss among yourselves some of the questions presented earlier in this presentation that helps bring critical public pedagogy to life, such as whose interests are being served in the dominant narrative? What economic and or political perspectives drive the choices of the narratives that were made? Where could you go to find out more information about these sites? What actions could you take now that you're aware of the various narratives?
Finally, these links offer a bit more insight into these two memorials. Also, they stand in sharp contrast to each other of how one side has evolved to be more representative of the many narratives associated with the site, with each site.
Consider this moment from the 1997 blockbuster Good Will Hunting.
Why shouldn't I work for the NSA? It's a tough one, but I'll take a shot. Say I'm working at the NSA and somebody puts a code on my desk, something no one else can break. Maybe I take a shot at it and maybe I break it. And I'm real happy with myself because I did my job well. But maybe that code was the location of some rebel army in North Africa or the Middle East. And once they have that location, they bomb the village where the rebels are hiding. 1,500 people that I never met, never had no problem with, get killed. Now the politicians are saying, oh, send in the Marines to secure the area because they don't give a shit. It won't be their kid over there getting shot, just like it wasn't them when their number got called because they were all pulling a tour in the National Guard. It'll be some kid from Southie over there taking shrapnel in the ass. He comes back to find that the plant he used to work at got exported to the country he just got back from, and the guy who put the shrapnel in his ass got his old job because he'll work for 15 cents a day and no bathroom breaks. Meanwhile, he realizes the only reason he was over there in the first place was so that we could install a government that would sell us oil at a good price. And of course, the oil companies use a little skirmish over there to scare up domestic oil prices. A cute little ancillary benefit for them, but it ain't helping my buddy at $2.50 a gallon. They're taking their sweet time bringing the oil back, of course. Maybe they even took the liberty of hiring an alcoholic skipper who likes to drink martinis and fucking play slalom with the icebergs. It ain't too long till he hits one, spills the oil, and kills all the sea life in the North Atlantic. So now my buddy's out of work, he can't afford to drive, so he's walking to the fucking job interviews, which sucks because the shrapnel in his ass is giving him chronic hemorrhoids, and meanwhile he's starving because every time he tries to get a bite to eat, the only blue plate special they're serving is North Atlantic scrod with Quaker State. So what did I think? I'm holding out for something better. I figure, fuck it, while I'm at it, why not just shoot my buddy, take his job, give it to his sworn enemy, hike up gas prices, bomb a village, club a baby seal, hit the hash pipe, and join the National Guard. I could be...
Since American media is owned by a handful of multinational conglomerates with interests in a variety of major industries, most media products are supportive of free market capitalism and a post-colonial status quo. For example, consider the fact that until the fall of 2011, when Comcast Corporation gained a majority share, General Electric owned controlling interests in NBC Universal. NBC Universal includes a major TV network in NBC, two major news channels, MSNBC and CNBC, along with Telemundo, USA Network, Sci-Fi Channel, Bravo, Oxygen, Chiller, etc. They also own Universal Studios movies. GE is also the largest weapons manufacturer in the U.S. and, of course, an energy conglomerate and a financial institution in GE Capital, among many other money-making ventures. So we have to ask ourselves, did they represent their stockholders when reporting on decisions about starting 2 wars during the last decade? How accurately did their news channels report the financial crisis when GE Capital Mortgage was in the thick of the disaster? How might Universal Pictures represent a war in films if going to war means huge profits for the corporation and its shareholders? On rare occasions, however, there are popular cultural artifacts that represent resistance and critical analysis of entrenched ideologies. Examining these moments of resistance in cultural products, as well as exploring the more common representations of dominant ideologies, can facilitate emancipatory learning.
Turning to texts of all kinds, handwritten or printed, personal or published, all of these offer opportunities for learning about a specific culture, time period, or event. Close examination of these types of texts helps learners to question previously held assumptions. The handwritten document contains some interesting surprises. While written by a Union soldier during the Civil War in the United States, it contains perspectives that most would perceive as sympathetic to the South. This is a great tool to use for understanding the everyday experiences of soldiers during wartime, and to help learners understand that history is multifaceted and complex. Not all soldiers were unified in their perspectives about why they were fighting. The Brownies book was a periodical published for 2 years in the early 1920s in New York by the NAACP to respond to racist perspectives found in the most popular children's magazine of the time, St. Nicholas. Asking learners to use a critical lens to understand handwritten or printed texts sets them off in a new direction for discussion and learning. Take some time to consider monuments in your area. What contested narratives do they represent? What texts, images, film, or video footage tell stories about your community? And what new ways can you engage learners with this cultural evidence? What types of questions will you ask? How will you encourage learners to ask their own questions?
As places of public pedagogy, museums offer sites for informal yet powerful learning. Museum educators create learning environments that encourage adult learners to engage with stories, narratives that often disrupt commonly held socially constructed assumptions. Primary sources in film, image, and text combine with museum objects to offer immersive experiences for learners, whether in situ, in exhibit space, or through special programs. We encourage you to engage with primary source materials in ways that will enhance learning environments, broaden the appeal of your exhibits, and enrich programs created for your museum. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you.